Before he started the program, he wasn't a very happy child. His eye contact was very, very poor. He had very little spontaneous language. He had quite a lot of language, but it was totally echolalia. And we were having terrible difficulties with his toileting. He was smearing feces. And we were very concerned about him when we went to start up, weren't we? Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And now, as you're 6 months into the program, how would you describe him?
I would describe him as transformed. Really, he's so much happier. He's a really happy child now. His eye contact is much better. His language has increased hugely, both as regards quantity, but also, more importantly, it's nearly all spontaneous now. He talks to us when he wants something. He tells us what he wants. He's much more. His language is much more interactive.
And I would add to that, he's attaching to people clearly much more. He didn't know how to call it, let's say. I would say he had some attachment, but definitely only weeks after we started the program, he started calling Jackie clearly Mammy, and if she was out, he would ask me, Mammy coming, which he had never done before.
And this is my husband Simon, and our son is called Oscar, and he is now 5 years old, and we've been doing our program for 16 months, and Oscar is doing brilliantly.
So what was Oscar like when you first began your program? If you could kind of paint a picture, describe what he's like.
He was completely in his own world. He had absolutely no communication skills. He was non-verbal. He cried most of the day. He also ismed all day long. His ism was rocking. He would lie on the floor and just push himself into the floor, and he would be scarlet and soaking with sweat. If anyone else dared to come into the room, just anywhere in the house, he would just disappear and hide behind a settee or under a table or anywhere that he could squeeze into a space to get away from the world. He had no interaction with anyone. And Oscar was diagnosed at 22 months with, autism, and that just floored us. He had to go for speech and language therapy and occupational therapy to try and encourage the play. And he went there from 18 months, well, it was probably 20 months, until just a year ago, which would have made him just over 4 years old. When he was there, he never spoke a word, even though he went for speech and language therapy for 2 full years. He learned to use pictures, the PEC system for communication, which he used brilliantly. But if you didn't have a particular picture of a new thing, it was a nightmare. You had to go and then take another picture of it. It was a real crutch, and they were all over the house. The pictures were sticking everywhere, and it didn't really solve any of the problems, apart from the fact we knew what he meant. He still used to cry and rock and do things. So speech and language therapy, 2 years on, didn't say a word, and occupational therapy didn't really help because he still lined everything up and was exclusive and just played with the same toys over and over and over again.
Okay, and then you started working on speech yourself.
Yeah.
From the startup program.
Absolutely.
And what was your experience with that?
The startup program was just absolutely amazing. It changed both our lives. We now have a life. I was absolutely devastated when I was told there was no hope. The speech and language therapist actually came out to my house. She felt so bad. She came out to actually use the words that Oscar would never speak. He would never be able to speak. There was autism, and there were other problems, which she meant were motor planning problems, which in turn many of those have been resolved in the playroom just by playing and the one-to-one interaction. And it's just absolutely amazing. The startup program I went to in January 2005, and it just has been the best thing I've ever done. It's just changed all of us so much, and we started working on Oscar the minute I got home, and we saw results immediately. Within 2.5 weeks of joining him with the rocking, the rocking decreased about 80% straight away, and he started looking at us because he was so amazed at us joining him and not stopping him, which we used to do, and it was just absolutely amazing experience. You know, what then happened was, very soon after, he started having 20 sort of garbled words, which came very, very quickly, and then one day out of the blue he just turned round and said Bagheera, which is the panther from Jungle Book, and we were just completely
everybody made the phone, the grandparents and everything, Oscar, say your word, you know, and everybody's going, yeah.
And now he is just amazing. He never ever, you know, stops talking. He's quite spontaneous with his speech now, which is fantastic. We're still working on some of the clarity of speech, and we were actually told 2 weeks ago by the educational psychologist who came to assess him for the very first time since we began the programme that he's now 1 year and 2 months above his age level, with many skills and understanding especially, and perception, and that if he went back to speech and language therapy he would probably be discharged, which is a miracle.
Yeah, that's really actually quite remarkable, isn't it? Yeah.
So it's fantastic.
Wow.
It's just great. It's life is okay. It'd be nice to not have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to do the program, you know, for 2 hours and things like that. But it's just so rewarding that, you know, we don't mind.
No, we're really excited. You know. Yeah, it's given us a new lease of life, and you know, when you do see him, he's so much fun that you just couldn't not.
I'm Linda again, and Sean's my son, who's 13. No speech. He had spoken a little bit as a baby, and then he lost that speech, and then it came back, just the echoing, just the repetition. And we ran the programme for probably 6 months, no speech, nothing, but we kept going, and then we got the first few words, and it was like, "Come here, mummy," and he was with a volunteer under a blanket. And she shouted, "Linda, come and see this." And I thought, oh, what's he done? And he was like, "Come here, mummy," and he was speaking. And the volunteer and I were just standing there crying. And that was 2 years ago. And ever since then, it's just taken off. The language has just, you know, increased weekly. And 6 months ago, we were at Max Impact. And I remember we said, when we went to start off 1 year ago, William asked us to write a list of the things we would most like to see happen in the next 6 months, and one of them was to have Sean say a complete sentence. And now he says complete sentences. We have conversations. So that's huge.
That's brilliant.
I mean, Sunrise has taught Sean to speak.
Yeah. Started your program with Laura?
Just over 3 years ago.
And what was she like when you began your program?
She was non-verbal, not able to interact, severe behaviour issues, self-harming, completely shut down. She was just like a cushion, that's what we used to call her. We used to call her a cushion. She just didn't really, she would watch the same video consistently, over and over again. She had very repetitive behaviours. She used to stuff her socks constantly with whatever was in the room. Graffiti the walls. pretty aggressive, would lash out a lot, throw things at you, throw furniture, hit you, pinch you, pull your hair. Very uncontrollable, wouldn't put clothes on, couldn't dress her at all. No. She would only eat certain foods and then when you did give her those foods, she would throw them. So she used to go in for food tray. So it was pretty horrible.
So when you say she was non-verbal, she wasn't saying any words at all?
No. And
how much of her time would you say she spent isming and being exclusive versus kind of being interactive with you?
90% of the time.
I think to start with it was 90% of the time exclusive.
Yeah.
And how would you describe her now?
Oh. Very confident, independent, verbal, very verbal. She still has needs to work on her language. But she's able to have a conversation, she's able to ask why questions, answer your questions. She interacts very well with children and adults. She's been on the stage and done speeches on the mic to the whole school. She's received awards for good behaviour. She's
very
gold,
loving.
very loving, very caring. They've said she's the most polite child in the class. She's got extremely good manners, and she's very caring, isn't she? Very caring of her other peers. So if she trips over somebody, she would always say, "Oh, I'm really sorry," and try to help them. Very helpful. The teachers love her. They think she's funny. She's got a great sense of humour. She's very playful. Gosh, she's amazing. She's absolutely amazing now. Yeah, I mean, there's no more aggressive behaviour, no more graffiti on the walls. All of those things no longer exist. And she's now a happy, content little girl. Plays with her brothers, she has friends, lots of friends, who love her to pieces. And she's the first in the line, isn't she? She's up front consistently, so she'll always be the first up. So she never drags behind. She's not shy. She's always very forward now, and very sure of herself, I would say. Yeah.
And so socially, she's completely transformed.
Yes.
And now I know she's in a mainstream school environment. How's she doing with her learning, with her academics?
Academics, she's top of the class, isn't she?
She's top. Yeah, she is. She's top of the class. She's brought home spellings before, which we were worried and concerned when we first got them, because I suppose the same as all the other children, you know, you sort of look and you think, she's never going to be able to do this. And we tested the first time. She's learnt them all every single time.
That's her right now. Yeah.
That's her right now. God ask.
What would you say finally to a parent who's sort of considering perhaps doing a Sunrise program?
I would say just go for it, and you'll never look back. It's just people have said to me, you know, if it worked for every child, surely we would have heard about it. And I went, well, that's what I was told, and I didn't listen to it. And I'm so glad that I didn't listen to it. And they had William said on one of the programs, he says, you know what, if you're nervous, do it anyway. And I was nervous, but I did it anyway, and it's just changed our lives.